The message arrived on a cold morning in March. Every screen on Earth, Mars, and Luna displayed the same thing. A face that was not human stared out from billions of devices. Its skin was gray and smooth like stone. Its eyes were black and empty. "People of Earth," the alien said. Its voice was calm and cold. "We are the Vakros Empire. We have watched your species for 15 years. You have resources we require. You have a world we will use. Surrender within 30 days or we will take what we need by force." The transmission ended. For a moment, the entire solar system was silent. Captain Jiho Kang stood in the command center of Luna Station and felt his hands shake. He remembered another message, 15 years ago. A Vakros scout ship had visited the outer colonies. The aliens had opened fire without warning. 3,000 people died in minutes. Jiho's wife and daughter were among them. "They're coming," said Commander Yuna Lee. She stood beside him, her face pale but steady. "Intelligence says we have maybe 25 days before their fleet arrives." Jiho looked at the tactical display. Red dots marked the approaching Vakros armada. The computer counted them automatically. 847 warships. Each one was bigger and more powerful than anything Earth had ever built. "How many ships can we gather?" Jiho asked. 214, Yuna said quietly. "That's everything. Every destroyer, every cruiser, every fighter we can pull from patrol duty." The numbers were impossible. 4 Vakros ships for every human vessel. But Jiho had learned something 15 years ago when he pulled survivors from burning stations. Humans didn't give up. They fought even when fighting seemed pointless. The Admiral Council met that afternoon. 12 men and women sat around a table and argued about Earth's future. Some wanted to surrender. They showed projections and casualty estimates. If they fought, millions would die. If they surrendered, maybe the aliens would be merciful. Merciful? Jiho's voice cut through the debate. They murdered 3,000 civilians without warning. They didn't ask questions. They didn't negotiate. They just killed. Admiral Chen shook his head. "This isn't about revenge, Captain. This is about survival. We can't win this fight." "We can't win if we don't try," Jiho said. He pulled up a star map. "We have advantages they don't expect. We know our own system. We can use the asteroid belt, the gravity wells, every rock between here and Jupiter." Lieutenant Hannah Park stepped forward. She was young, only 32, but she was the best tactical officer in the fleet. "I've been working on something," she said. "A defense plan. We call it Protocol Aegis." She activated a holographic display. The asteroid belt appeared, spinning slowly. Thousands of rocks tumbled through space between Mars and Jupiter. "The Vakros fleet will come through here," Hannah explained. "They'll use the standard approach vector because it's the most direct route to Earth. But the belt gives us cover. We can hide. We can strike and vanish. We can make them bleed for every kilometer." "It's suicide," someone muttered. "It's a chance," Hannah replied. "A small one. But it's better than kneeling." The council voted. It was close, 7-5 in favor of fighting. Earth would make it stand. The next 3 weeks moved like a fever dream. Ships gathered from across the solar system. The Indomitable, Jiho's flagship, was the largest. She was a heavy cruiser, bristling with railguns and missile pods, but even she looked tiny compared to the Vakros dreadnoughts in the intelligence photos. Engineer Daeho Choi worked without sleep, modifying the fleet's fusion reactors. He was a genius with engines and power systems. "I can push them harder," he told Jiho. "Way harder than the safety specs allow. We'll get maybe 300% output for short bursts." "What's the cost?" Jiho asked. Daeho's smile was grim. "The reactors might explode, but if we don't use everything we have, we're dead anyway." Pilot Woo Jin Nam, trained his fighter squadron day and night. The Wraith Squadron was Earth's best. 20 pilots who could fly through debris fields and asteroid tunnels at speeds that made computers crash. Wu Jin was their leader, a man who seemed to feel no fear. "We'll hit them where they don't expect," Wu Jin said during the briefing. "Fast and hard, in and out before they know we're there." On Luna Station, families said goodbye. 34,000 crew members prepared to leave. Some were veterans like Ji-ho, who had fought in the border skirmishes. Others were fresh from the academy, barely 20 years old. Ensign Taeyang Kim was one of them. He was a communications officer, nervous and young, but he volunteered anyway. "I'm scared," Taeyang admitted to his mother on a video call. "Everyone is scared," she said, "but you're going anyway. That's what courage is." The night before departure, Ji-ho walked through the Indomitable's corridors. He saw crew members writing letters, recording messages, praying to gods both old and new. Everyone knew the odds. Everyone understood that most of them wouldn't come home. He found Yuna on the observation deck, staring at Earth. The blue planet hung in the black like a jewel. "Do you think we can actually do this?" she asked. Ji-ho was quiet for a moment. "I think we have to try. If we don't, we're not just giving up our lives. We're giving up everything humanity could become. And if we fail, then we fail fighting. That's worth something." The fleet departed at dawn, Earth time. 214 ships broke orbit and headed toward the asteroid belt. Behind them, Earth watched and waited. Cities went quiet. People gathered in streets and homes, watching the news feeds. On the Indomitable's bridge, Dr. So-min Han worked at her console, calculating trajectories and gravity wells. She was an astrophysicist, brilliant with numbers and orbits. Every calculation had to be perfect. One mistake could send a ship crashing into an asteroid. Sergeant Hyejin Ko drilled her Marines in the hangar bays. They practiced boarding actions and zero-gravity combat. Hyejin was tough and scarred, a veteran of a dozen fights. She knew that if the Vakros ships got close enough to board, things had gone very wrong. The journey to the belt took 6 days. 6 days of silence and preparation. 6 days of checking weapons and running drills. 6 days of thinking about home. On the 7th day, the sensors picked up the Vakros fleet. 847 ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the belt. They moved in perfect formation, confident and unstoppable. Ji-ho stood on the bridge and watched them come. His crew waited for orders. The entire human fleet waited, hidden among the asteroids, holding their breath. "This is it," Ji-ho said quietly. Then louder to his crew and to every ship in the fleet. "All hands to battle stations. Activate Protocol Aegis. Let's show them what humans can do." The Indomitable powered up its weapons. Across the belt, 214 ships did the same. They were outnumbered, they were outgunned, but they were not afraid. The battle for humanity's survival was about to begin. The Vakros fleet moved through the asteroid belt like a knife through water. They expected no resistance. They had crushed 47 civilizations before Earth. None had survived the first day. Captain Ji-ho Kang watched them from behind a spinning chunk of rock the size of a city. The Indomitable drifted silently, all non-essential systems powered down. Around him in the belt, 213 other ships waited in the dark. "They're confident," Yuna whispered beside him. "Look how they move. No scouts, no caution." Ji-ho nodded. The Vakros ships traveled in tight formation, making themselves an easy target. They didn't think Earth could hurt them. "Wolf packs," Ji-ho ordered. "Execute pattern 7 Alpha." The human fleet split into 7 groups. Each pack had 20 to 30 ships. They spread out across the belt. Using asteroids for cover, the Vakros fleet sailed right into the trap. Lieutenant Hana Park counted down on the tactical display. "Contact in 30 seconds. 20, 10. The The first Vakros ship passed within range of Wolfpack 3. The pack commander, Captain Kyung-Oh, gave the order. 20 human ships opened fire at once. Railgun rounds tore through space at impossible speeds. Missiles streaked from launch tubes. Particle beams carved glowing lines through the dark. The Vakros ships' shields flared bright blue, absorbing the hits. But 20 ships firing together was too much. The shields collapsed. Rounds punched through the hull. The ship broke apart in a ball of fire. The Vakros fleet hesitated. Then they returned fire. Space became a storm of light and death. Vakros beam weapons were powerful and precise. A single shot could cut a human ship in half. Their missiles were smart and fast, dodging and weaving through point defense fire. Earth ships died. The destroyer, Falcon, took a direct hit and exploded. The cruiser, Defiant, lost its engine section and spun away, venting atmosphere. Within the first 5 minutes, 12 human ships were gone. But humans didn't fight fair. Woojin Nam led his Wraith squadron through a narrow gap between 2 asteroids. The opening was barely wider than his fighter. Behind him, 19 more pilots followed at full speed. Vakros ships were too big to follow. They had to go around. "Target the command carrier," Woojin said calmly. He pulled hard on the stick, spinning his fighter through a corkscrew that would have made most pilots black out. The squadron followed like they were connected by invisible wires. The Vakros command carrier was massive, bigger than some Earth cities. Its shields could stop anything, but Woojin wasn't aiming at the shields. He aimed at the exhaust ports where the ship vented heat. The squadron dove toward the carrier's stern. Point defense cannons tracked them, filling space with fire. 3 fighters exploded. Woojin didn't slow down. He armed his missiles and fired at point-blank range. The missiles screamed into the exhaust ports and detonated inside the ship. Secondary explosions rippled through the carrier's engineering section. The massive vessel shuddered and began to list. "Break and scatter!" Woojin ordered. The remaining fighters peeled away as the carrier's ammunition stores cooked off. The explosion lit up the belt like a second sun. Engineer Daeho Choi sat in the Indomitable's reactor room, his hands dancing across controls. Warning lights flashed all around him. The reactor was running at 280% capacity, far beyond any safe limit. "Sir, we can't maintain this," a technician said nervously. "We don't need to maintain it," Daeho replied. "We just need 10 more minutes." The Indomitable surged forward, its engines burning bright. Jiho used the extra power to make impossible maneuvers, dodging fire that should have destroyed them. They swooped past a Vakros battleship, firing full broadside. Every weapon on the ship unleashed at once. The battleship's shields held for 3 seconds, then failed. The hull ruptured from bow to stern. All across the belt, human ships attacked and vanished like ghosts. They used asteroids for cover, popping out to fire, then disappearing again. The Vakros fleet tried to respond, but they couldn't track targets that kept hiding. Hana Park coordinated the attacks from the tactical station. Wolfpack 5, hit Sector 7 Delta. Wolfpack 2, collapse back to position Alpha. Pack 6, prepare the ambush. She was moving pieces on a 3-dimensional chessboard, and every move cost lives. But every move also destroyed Vakros ships. The battle raged for hours, then days. Neither side stopped to rest. Crews fought until they collapsed from exhaustion. Then other crews took over. On day 3, Hana sprang her main trap. She had been feeding the Vakros fleet false sensor data, making it look like Earth ships were retreating toward Mars. The Vakros commander took the bait. 200 alien ships pursued what they thought was a broken, fleeing enemy. They flew right into a kill zone. 17 asteroids, each rigged with fusion bombs, detonated simultaneously. The explosions created a chain reaction that tore through space like a tidal wave. Vakros ships caught in the blast had no chance. Shields meant nothing. Armor meant nothing. The fusion fire consumed everything. When the light faded, only debris remained. The Vacross Admiral, Thorax Vel, watched from his flagship as half his fleet died in seconds. He had served the Empire for 60 years. He had conquered planets and destroyed fleets. But he had never seen anything like this. "These humans," he said slowly, "fight like demons." His tactical officer agreed. "They don't care about their own lives. They only care about killing us." Thorax Vel made a decision. "All ships fall back. Regroup beyond the belt." The Vacross fleet began to withdraw. They moved carefully now, checking every asteroid, scanning every shadow. They had learned to fear the dark. But the humans weren't finished. Sergeant Hyejin Ko led a boarding party onto a damaged Vacross cruiser. Her Marines moved through the corridors in zero gravity, weapons ready. They found the alien crew trying to repair critical systems. The fight was brutal and close. Hyejin lost 3 Marines in the first corridor, but humans were smaller and faster in tight spaces. They used the ship's own layout against the aliens, ambushing them around corners, setting traps in the narrow passages. When it was done, Hyejin planted charges throughout the ship and evacuated her team. The cruiser exploded 10 minutes later. Ensign Taeyang Kim sat at his communications station, his hands shaking from adrenaline. He had been maintaining communications for 9 days without sleep. His job was to make sure every ship could talk to every other ship. In the chaos of battle, that was nearly impossible. "Indomitable! This is the Perseus," a voice crackled through. "We're hit bad. Life support is failing." Taeyang routed the message to Jiho. The captain's face was grim. "Can they make it to the rendezvous point?" Jiho asked. Taeyang checked the sensors. "Negative, sir. They're dead in space." Jiho closed his eyes for a moment. Tell them we'll remember." The Perseus died with all hands. But before they went, they fired every remaining weapon at a Vacross destroyer, taking it down with them. On day 9, the battle finally ended. The Vacross fleet limped away from the belt, running toward the outer system. They had arrived with 847 ships. Only 158 remained. Earth had destroyed 689 alien warships. But the cost was terrible. Jiho stood on the Indomitable's bridge and looked at the casualty reports. 183 human ships were gone. 28,467 crew members were dead. Only 31 ships remained operational. Dr. Soman Han worked at her console, her fingers moving slowly. She was exhausted beyond words. "Sir, I'm tracking the Vacross ships. They're not heading home." Jiho felt his stomach drop. "Where are they going?" "Jupiter's orbit," Soman said quietly. "They're regrouping near the gas giant." Yuna appeared beside Jiho. Her uniform was torn and burned. "They're not giving up." "Neither are we," Jiho said, but his voice was hollow. He knew the truth. 31 damaged ships couldn't fight 158 Vacross vessels, not and win. But as he looked around the bridge, he saw his crew still standing, still ready. They had done the impossible once. Maybe they could do it again. Or maybe they would all die trying. Either way, Earth would never surrender. The 31 surviving ships limped toward Jupiter's moons. They moved slowly, trailing debris and leaking air. Some had holes you could see through. Others had engines that barely worked. But they kept moving. Captain Jiho Kang walked through the Indomitable's corridors and saw the damage everywhere. Blast marks on the walls, exposed wiring, sections sealed off because they had no atmosphere. The ship groaned and shuddered with every movement. In the medical bay, Medic Yoonji Shin worked without stopping. She had been operating for 9 days straight. Her hands were steady even though her eyes were red with exhaustion. Wounded filled every bed, every chair, every available space. Some would live, many would not. "How many?" Jiho asked quietly. Yoonji didn't look up from the patient she was treating. 3,891 wounded. I've lost 212 in surgery. Her voice cracked slightly. I can't save them all, Captain. You're doing everything you can, Jiho said. It's not enough. It's never enough. Jiho had no answer for that. He moved on, visiting other sections of the ship. In engineering, Daeho Choi sat on the floor beside the main reactor. His face was pale and drawn. Radiation burns covered his arms. How bad is it? Jiho asked. Daeho laughed, but there was no humor in it. The reactor is dead, Captain. Well, dying. We pushed it too hard. I can keep it running for maybe one more fight. After that, it'll either shut down completely or explode. Can you fix it? Not with what we have. Not out here. Daeho looked up at Jiho. We've got one shot left. That's it. Throughout the fleet, the story was the same. Every ship was damaged. Every crew was exhausted. They had fought beyond their limits and won, but winning had cost them everything. Commander Yuna Lee gathered the remaining ship captains for a conference. Their faces appeared on screens around the Indomitable's bridge. Some were injured. All looked tired beyond words. Status reports, Yuna said. The captains spoke one by one. The cruiser, Defiant, had lost its main weapons. The destroyer, Courage, had no shields. The frigate, Relentless, was running on backup power. Every ship had a similar story. Captain Kyung-oh of the cruiser, Valiant, summed it up. We're held together with hope and duct tape. One more fight might be all we can manage. Then we'll make it count, Jiho said. He pulled up the tactical display. The Vakros ships were clearly visible near Jupiter, arranged in a defensive formation. Lieutenant Hana Park had been studying them for hours. Something's wrong, Hana said. She highlighted 9 ships at the center of the formation. These are different, bigger. The other Vakros ships are protecting them. Dr. So-Min Han ran the sensor data through her systems. They're dreadnoughts, super heavy capital ships. Each one is 3 times the size of the Indomitable. A heavy silence fell over the bridge. The rest of the Vakros fleet is leaving, So-Min continued. Only these 9 ships remain. They're coming toward Earth. Jiho felt ice in his stomach. Intercepted communications. Now. Ensign Taeyang Kim worked frantically at his station. He managed to decrypt a Vakros transmission. When he played it, everyone stopped to listen. The voice belonged to Thorax Vel, the Vakros admiral. He spoke in his own language, but the computer translated. To all Imperial ships, withdraw to the staging area. The human species has proven too dangerous for standard integration protocols. I will handle this personally. Another voice, younger, questioned him. Admiral, the Empire has recalled us. They ordered full withdrawal. I don't care about the Empire's orders, Thorax Vel replied. These humans killed 600 of our ships. They humiliated us. I will not let that stand. I will take my elite dreadnoughts and burn their world to ash. The Empire can court-martial me later. The transmission ended. He's going rogue, Yuna said quietly. The Vakros Empire is pulling back, but this admiral wants revenge. Jiho looked at the 9 massive dreadnoughts on the display. Each one could probably destroy a planet by itself. Together they were unstoppable. Can we evacuate Earth in time? Someone asked. So-Min ran the numbers. The dreadnoughts will reach Earth in 7 days. We could maybe evacuate 1 million people. Earth has 9 billion. The math was simple and terrible. If those 9 ships reached Earth, humanity would die. Then we stop them here, Jiho said. Sir, we can't, Captain Kyung-oh protested. 31 damaged ships against 9 dreadnoughts? It's suicide. It's always been suicide, Jiho replied. But we're still here. He looked around at his crew, at Hana, who had orchestrated impossible victories, at Daeho, who had pushed machines beyond their limits, at Yuna, who never stopped believing, at young Taeyang, barely out of the academy but still standing. I'm not ordering anyone to fight, Jiho said. You've all done enough, more than enough. But if we run, Earth dies. If we hide, Earth dies. Our only choice is to buy them time. He paused. I need volunteers. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Yuna stepped forward. I'm with you. Hana was next. Someone needs to plan this mess. Might as well be me. Daeho stood slowly. My reactor's got one more fight in it. Let's make it spectacular. One by one, every crew member on the Indomitable volunteered. On the other ships, the story was the same. Not a single person chose to run. We're all insane, Kyung-oh said, but he was smiling. All right, how do we kill 9 dreadnoughts with 31 broken ships? Hana pulled up a tactical display and began sketching out a plan. It was desperate and dangerous. It required perfect timing and incredible luck. Most ships wouldn't survive the first minutes. We can't beat them with firepower, Hana explained. So we don't try. We turn our ships into weapons, ramming attacks, reactor overloads. Anything that gets us close enough to hurt them. Manned torpedoes, Daeho said quietly. You're asking us to become manned torpedoes. I'm asking for volunteers to sacrifice themselves so Earth lives, Hana replied. I know what I'm asking. I know the cost. Sergeant Hyejin Ko spoke up from the Marine section. My Marines are ready. If we can board those dreadnoughts, we'll tear them apart from the inside. Pilot Woojin Nam's voice came through the comm. My squadron can make attack runs. If we can disable their shields, your ramming ships will have a better chance. The plan took shape over the next 6 days. 22 ships volunteered to become suicide vessels. Their reactors would be rigged to overload on impact. Their crews would stay aboard until the last moment, guiding the ships into their targets. The remaining 9 ships would provide support, fighting to create openings for the ramming attacks. Private Nari Seo was 19 years old and terrified. She served on a supply ship that somehow survived the belt battle. Now she volunteered for a boarding party. Her friends thought she was crazy. Why? They asked. Nari didn't have a good answer. Because someone has to. Because I want my family to be proud. Because I'm scared of what happens if we do nothing. On the 6th day, Jiho addressed the entire fleet. His face appeared on every screen, in every ship. In 48 hours, we engage the enemy, he said. We all know the odds. We all know what this means. Most of us won't see another sunrise. He paused, choosing his words carefully. But our children will. Our families will. Earth will survive because we chose to stand here. Not because we had to. Not because we were ordered to. But because when faced with impossible choices, humanity chooses to fight. He looked directly into the camera, speaking to every person listening. The Vakros think we're weak. They think fear will make us kneel. They're wrong. Fear makes us dangerous. Fear makes us do impossible things. And tomorrow, we're going to show them exactly how dangerous humans can be. The speech ended. In the silence that followed, the crews prepared for battle one last time. Yoonji recorded final messages for families. Taeyang made sure every communication system was perfect. Hyejin sharpened her knives and checked her rifle. Woojin flew practice runs through Jupiter's radiation belts, and Jiho stood on the observation deck, looking at the 9 massive dreadnoughts in the distance. They hung in space like dark gods, waiting. We're coming for you, he whispered to the void. The battle began at dawn, Earth time. Humanity had decided that if they were going to die, they would die as the sun rose over their home world. It was symbolic. It was beautiful. It was human. Captain Jiho Kang stood on the bridge of the Indomitable and watched the 9 dreadnoughts approach. They moved slowly, confident in their power. Each ship was a dark mountain of metal and weapons. Their shields glowed faintly blue, strong enough to withstand anything Earth could throw at them. Or so they thought. All ships, Begin attack pattern Omega, Jiho ordered. The 31 human ships split into groups. The 22 suicide vessels moved forward in a loose formation. Behind them, the 9 support ships prepared to cover their approach. The dreadnoughts opened fire first. Massive beam weapons carved through space, bright enough to hurt the eyes. The first volley destroyed 3 human ships instantly. They simply vanished in balls of fire. But the other ships kept coming. "Wujin, you're up," Jiho said. Pilot Wujin Nam and his fighter squadron launched from the Indomitable's hangar. Only 12 fighters remained from the original 20. They streaked toward the nearest dreadnought at full speed. Point defense systems tracked them immediately. Space filled with explosive rounds and laser fire. A fighter to Wu Jin's left took a hit and spun away, trailing flames. "Stay tight," Wu Jin said calmly. He dove under a wave of fire, then rolled right, threading through a gap that seemed impossible. The squadron followed, trusting his lead completely. They reached the dreadnought's shield perimeter. Most weapons couldn't penetrate the barrier, but Wu Jin wasn't aiming at the shield. He targeted the exhaust ports, just like he had done to the command carrier in the belt. "All missiles, fire on my mark," Wu Jin said. He waited until the last possible second, until they were so close he could see the heat distortion from the exhaust. "Fire!" 12 fighters launched their missiles simultaneously. The warheads screamed into the exhaust ports and detonated deep inside the dreadnought. Explosions rippled through the ship's engineering section. The shield flickered and weakened. "Now!" Hana Park shouted from the Indomitable. 3 suicide ships accelerated toward the wounded dreadnought. Their reactors burned at maximum power. Engineer Daeho Choi had modified each one personally, turning stable fusion reactors into massive bombs. The dreadnought tried to restore its shields, but it was too slow. The first suicide ship struck near the bridge. The reactor detonated on impact, releasing energy equivalent to a small star. The dreadnought's armor held for almost 2 seconds, then it ruptured. The second and third ships hit moments later. The combined force of 3 reactor explosions tore the massive vessel apart. Debris scattered across thousands of kilometers. 1 dreadnought down, 8 to go, but the cost was immediate. The remaining 8 dreadnoughts changed tactics. They spread out, making themselves harder to surround. Their fire became more accurate. 4 more human ships died in the next minute. Sergeant Hyejin Ko stood in the hangar of the cruiser Valiant, watching the battle through the open bay doors. Her Marine squad waited beside her, mag boots locked to the deck. "Get ready," she told them. "When Captain Kyung-oh makes his run, we jump." The Valiant was another suicide ship, but with a difference. Instead of just ramming the enemy, it would deliver Hyejin and her Marines directly onto a dreadnought's hull. It was the most dangerous thing she had ever attempted. It was probably the last thing she would ever do. The Valiant accelerated toward a dreadnought, dodging fire as it went. Captain Kyung-oh's voice came through the comm. 30 seconds, Sergeant. Get your people to the ramp." Hyejin led her Marines to the edge of the hangar. Space yawned below them, cold and infinite. The dreadnought grew larger with every second. 10 seconds, Kyung-oh counted down. 5, 4, 3. "Jump!" Hyejin screamed. She leaped into space. Behind her, 20 Marines followed. They flew through the void, propelled by their suit thrusters. Below them, the Valiant struck the dreadnought's side and exploded. The shockwave hit Hyejin like a hammer, sending her spinning. She fired her thrusters, correcting her trajectory. The dreadnought's hull rushed up to meet her. She activated her mag boots at the last second and slammed into the metal surface. 17 Marines landed beside her. 3 had been lost in the explosion. "Move!" Hyejin ordered. They ran across the hull, searching for an airlock or maintenance hatch. Behind them, the battle raged. Ships died in bright flashes. Missiles streaked past. It was chaos. Hyejin found a hatch and cut through it with a plasma torch. The Marines dropped inside into the corridors of an alien warship. The Vakros crew inside were not prepared for boarders. They fought back, but humans were smaller and faster in close quarters. Hyejin's squad moved through the ship like ghosts, placing explosives on critical systems. Back in space, the suicide attacks continued. 2 ships struck a dreadnought simultaneously, overwhelming its shields. The massive vessel split in half, spilling atmosphere and debris. Another dreadnought caught a human destroyer in its tractor beam and crushed it like paper. But the destroyer's reactor was already set to overload. The explosion damaged the dreadnought's engines, leaving it crippled. Dr. Soman Han worked frantically at her console on the Indomitable. She was calculating gravitational trajectories, using Jupiter's massive pull to slingshot debris into the enemy ships. "I need 3 ships to detonate near the following coordinates," she said, transmitting numbers to the suicide vessels. The ships moved into position and detonated. The explosion sent asteroids and wreckage flying toward the dreadnoughts at incredible speeds. The improvised projectiles struck with the force of nuclear weapons. Ensign Taeyang Kim sat at his communication station, his hands shaking. He was maintaining contact with every ship, every squad, every fighter. He heard people die in real time, heard their last words, heard the screams. But he kept working, because if he stopped, the coordination would fail. And if coordination failed, everyone died for nothing. Indomitable. "This is Hyejin," a voice crackled through. "We've planted charges throughout the ship, detonating in 30 seconds. "Get out of there, Sergeant," Jiho ordered. "Negative, sir. No time." Hyejin's voice was calm. "It's been an honor." The transmission cut off. 10 seconds later, the dreadnought she was on exploded from the inside. Internal detonations were far more effective than external attacks. The ship tore itself apart. Hyejin and her entire squad were gone. Jiho felt something break inside him, but he couldn't stop, couldn't grieve, not yet. 5 dreadnoughts remained. 14 human ships were still fighting, but most were barely functional. The Indomitable had lost half its weapons. Its shields were down. Hull breaches vented atmosphere on 3 decks. Daeho appeared on the internal comm. His face was covered in radiation burns. "Captain, I can overload our reactor. Make the Indomitable into the biggest bomb we have." "How long do we have?" Jiho asked. 10 minutes after I start the process, maybe less." Jiho looked around the bridge, at Yuna, who had been with him through everything, at Hana, still coordinating attacks despite a broken arm, at Taeyang, maintaining communications while tears ran down his face, at Somin, calculating trajectories with a head injury that should have knocked her unconscious. "Do it," Jiho said. Daeho vanished from the screen. Deep in the engineering section, he began the overload sequence. Warning klaxons blared throughout the ship. "All remaining ships, this is Captain Jiho Kang," he broadcast to the fleet. "The Indomitable is going critical. We're making a run at the enemy flagship. Cover our approach." The remaining ships moved to protect the Indomitable as it accelerated toward Thorax Vel's flagship. Wu Jin's fighters made one last attack run, drawing fire away from the cruiser. Only 3 fighters returned. Private Nari Seo found herself the last surviving crew member on her supply ship. Everyone else was dead or evacuated. She sat in the pilot's seat, her hands on the controls. The ship wasn't armed, it wasn't armored. It was just a cargo hauler, but it could still fly, and its reactor could still explode. Nari aimed at a dreadnought and pushed the throttle to maximum. She thought about her family, about her mother, who told her to be brave, about her little brother who looked up to her. "I'm sorry I won't come home," she whispered. Then she closed her eyes and accelerated. The supply ship struck the dreadnought's command tower. The explosion wasn't as big as a warship's reactor, but it was enough. The dreadnought lost helm control and drifted into the firing line of another alien ship. The 2 massive vessels collided, destroying each other. 4 dreadnoughts left. The Indomitable was seconds away from the flagship. Thorax Vel watched the approaching ship and understood what was happening. "Humans," he said with something like respect. "They truly don't know when to quit." His tactical officer looked panicked. "Admiral, we need to retreat." "No," Thorax Vel said. "I wanted to burn their world. Instead, they will burn me. There is poetry in that." On the Indomitable's bridge, Jaiho gave his final order. "All remaining crew, evacuate to the escape pods. Now." "Sir, there's not enough time," Yuna protested. "Then make time. Go." Yuna, Hana, Taeyang, Somin. They all hesitated, but they went. Jiho stood alone on the bridge as the countdown reached 0. Through the view screen, he saw Earth in the distance, a blue jewel in the black. "We did it," he whispered. The Indomitable struck Thorax Vel's flagship. The reactor detonation was so powerful it was visible from Mars. Both ships ceased to exist. When the light faded, only 3 dreadnoughts remained, and only 9 human survivors, scattered in escape pods and damaged ships. But Earth was safe. The 3 remaining Vakros dreadnoughts fled. They ran from 9 survivors in damaged escape pods and dying ships. They ran from humans who had destroyed an empire's fleet with nothing but courage and desperation. They ran, and they never stopped running. Commander Yuna Lee floated in an escape pod, her body broken but alive. Around her in the debris field, 8 others clung to life. They were all that remained of 34,000 crew members. 9 people out of thousands. Lieutenant Hana Park was in another pod, her left arm gone below the elbow. She had lost it when the Indomitable's bridge decompressed. The pain was terrible, but she was alive. Engineer Daiho Choi drifted in a third pod, his body ravaged by radiation. The doctors would later tell him he had months to live, maybe a year if he was lucky. He considered himself lucky anyway. Pilot Woo Jin Nam was trapped in his damaged fighter, both legs broken, burns covering half his body. But he kept the fighter's systems running, maintaining a comlink with the other survivors. Medic Yoonji Shin had evacuated on a medical transport pod. She was physically unharmed, but her mind was shattered. She had watched too many people die, had held too many hands as life faded. She wasn't sure she would ever sleep without nightmares again. Ensign Taeyang Kim sat in the communications pod, blind in one eye from a console explosion. But he still had his equipment, still had his training. He immediately began coordinating the survivors. Sergeant Yejin Ko was not dead. Against all odds, she had survived the dreadnought's explosion, blown clear in an escape bubble, but she was missing 3 fingers on her right hand and carried guilt heavier than any physical wound. Private Nariseo was the biggest surprise. Her supply ship hadn't exploded on impact. She had ejected at the last second, and the escape system had worked. At 19 years old, she was the youngest survivor. Dr. Somin Han floated in a research pod, her spine fractured. She was paralyzed from the waist down, but her mind still worked, still calculated, still planned their survival. 9 people. 3 barely functional ships held together by hope and emergency repairs. A 47-day journey back to Earth. The first week was the hardest. They had to combine resources from the pods and damaged vessels. Taeyang coordinated it all, his voice calm even when reporting critical system failures. "We have enough air for 50 days if we ration carefully," he said. "Water for 45, food for 60. We can make it." "What about medical supplies?" Yoonji asked. Her voice was hollow, distant. "Enough to keep everyone alive. Probably. Probably wasn't certain, but it was all they had." Woo Jin managed to get his fighter's engines working at 20%. He pushed the damaged craft into position to tow the escape pods. It was slow, painful work. His broken legs screamed with every movement, but he didn't complain. Daiho and Somin worked together remotely, using the remaining functional systems to plot the most efficient course home. Every calculation mattered. They had no fuel to waste. "If we use Jupiter's gravity well correctly," Soman said, "we can slingshot ourselves toward the inner system, save weeks of travel time." "Do it," Yuna ordered. She had become the de facto leader of the survivors. Captain Jiho Kang was gone. Someone had to take command. The slingshot maneuver worked perfectly. It was the first thing that had gone right in what felt like forever. On day 10, they received a transmission from Earth. The entire planet had been watching, waiting, hoping. When the 9 survivors announced themselves, cities erupted in celebration. But the 9 didn't feel like celebrating. They felt hollow. 34,000 people left, Hana said quietly. 9 came back. That's not victory. That's survival. Survival is enough, Yuna replied. Earth is safe because of what we did, because of what they did. During the long journey home, the survivors talked. They shared memories of the fallen. Wu Jin told stories about his squadron, about pilots who performed miracles in the belt. Yunji spoke about the wounded she couldn't save, her voice breaking. Hyejin was silent for days. When she finally spoke, it was about her Marines. "They followed me into hell," she said. "Every single one of them. They trusted me, and I led them to death." "You led them to save Earth," Taeyang said gently. "That's what they chose. Doesn't make it hurt less." Nothing made it hurt less. On day 23, they intercepted Vakros transmissions. The alien empire was broadcasting across all channels, warning their fleets about humanity. "Avoid the Sol system at all costs," the message said. "The humans are apex predators. They fight without fear of death. They cannot be defeated by conventional means. All ships are ordered to maintain a minimum distance of 50 light-years from Earth." Nari listened to the transmission and felt a strange emotion. Pride, maybe. Or satisfaction. The galaxy feared humanity now, respected them. "We did that," she said. 9 of us and 34,000 ghosts. They also intercepted communications from other alien civilizations, species that had been conquered by the Vakros, species that had given up without a fight. Those species were talking about Earth, about the impossible defense, about humans who destroyed an empire's fleet with inferior technology and pure determination. "They're inspired," Somin said. "Rebellions are starting across Vakros space. Their empire is collapsing." "Good," Hana said. "Let it burn." On day 35, the survivors started failing physically. Daeho's radiation sickness worsened. He spent most of his time unconscious, conserved his strength for the few hours he could function. Wu Jin's legs became infected despite Yunji's best efforts. She had limited antibiotics, had to choose carefully how to use them. Soman's paralysis was permanent. She had accepted this with remarkable calm. "I'm alive," she said. "My brain works. That's enough." The escape pods began breaking down. Life support systems failed one by one. They transferred everyone to Wu Jin's fighter and one remaining functional pod, cramming 9 people into spaces designed for 2. It was miserable. It was claustrophobic. But it kept them breathing. On day 47, they saw Earth. The blue planet hung in space ahead of them, impossibly beautiful. Hundreds of ships came out to meet them, to escort them home. The survivors watched in silence as humanity's fleet surrounded them. "Look at that," Yuna whispered. "They rebuilt, already. New ships, fresh crews, ready to defend Earth if the Vakros ever returned. The 9 had bought humanity time to prepare. Time to build, time to become strong." They landed at Luna Station, where everything had started. Medical teams rushed forward, but the 9 insisted on walking out under their own power. Even Wu Jin, with his broken legs, even Soman in a wheelchair. They were the last defenders of Earth. They would stand tall. The station was packed with people. Thousands had gathered to see the survivors. When the 9 appeared, the crowd went silent. Then someone started clapping, then another, then everyone. The applause thundered through the station like a physical force. But the 9 didn't smile. They stood together, supporting each other, and thought about the ones who didn't come home. The memorial was built 3 days later, a wall of names, each one carefully carved, 33,358 names. Every person who had died defending Earth. The 9 survivors stood before the wall, each lost in private grief. "We didn't win because we were stronger," Yuna said, repeating words Captain Jiho Kang had spoken. "We won because we refused to accept extinction." Taeyang had recorded everything, every battle, every death, every moment of the defense. His recordings became required viewing at every military academy across human space. Future generations would learn from them, would understand the cost of freedom. Daiho died 3 months after returning to Earth. The radiation finally claimed him. His funeral was attended by millions. Yoonji never practiced medicine again. The nightmares were too much. She became a teacher instead, training new medics, making sure they were ready. Woojin lost both legs but learned to walk with prosthetics. He became a flight instructor, training pilots in the tactics that had saved humanity. Hyejin struggled with survivors' guilt for years. Therapy helped, slowly. She eventually became an advocate for veterans' mental health. Nari used her fame to push for better defenses, better ships, better training. At 19, she had become one of the most influential voices in human politics. Hana, Somin, Taeyang, and Yuna all found their own paths. All carried their scars, visible and invisible. All tried to honor the memory of those who died. They remained in contact, the 9 of them. Met every year on the anniversary of the battle. Stood together at the memorial wall and remembered. 10 years after the battle, Earth had become a major power in the galaxy. The Vakros Empire had collapsed, torn apart by rebellions inspired by humanity's stand. New alliances formed, new friendships. The 9 survivors were old now, worn down by time and trauma. Most were in their 40s or 50s, but they looked much older. War-aged people in ways that years couldn't measure. They gathered one last time at the memorial, all 9 together. It would be their final reunion. Daeho was already gone. Yoonji was sick. Somin's health was failing. "We did something impossible," Yuna said, her hand on the wall of names. "These people did something impossible." "They saved the world," Taeyang agreed. "We all did," Hana said. "The 9 who returned and the thousands who didn't, together." They stood in silence, remembering the belt battle, remembering the final desperate fight near Jupiter. Remembering friends and lovers and strangers who became family, remembering what it meant to be human. The motto of Earth's Defense Forces was carved at the base of the memorial. Remember the 9, honor the thousands. But the 9 survivors knew the truth. They weren't the heroes. The heroes were the names on the wall, the people who gave everything so Earth could survive. The 9 were just lucky, lucky to live. Lucky to tell the story, lucky to remember. And they would remember, until their last breaths, what humanity could accomplish when pushed to the edge. They would remember that Earth's defense destroyed an entire fleet, and only 9 returned.